Many older adults laugh off memory slips, but when someone starts repeating the same question, gets lost on a street they have driven for years, or begins making unsafe decisions they never used to make, that may no longer be just age. And the earlier you notice the difference, the more options you may still have. I'm Dr. Claire Bennett, and today I want to walk you through 7 signs that memory changes may be moving beyond normal aging. Not to frighten you, not to push you into worst-case thinking, but to help you recognize what deserves attention, what may still be treatable, and what should never be ignored. Before we get into the 7 signs, let me say something important. Normal aging can change memory a little. You may take longer to learn a new name. You may walk into a room and forget why you went there for a moment. You may misplace your glasses, then find them after retracing your steps. You may forget the day of the week and remember it later. That can happen in healthy aging. What is not considered a normal part of aging is memory or thinking change that starts interfering with everyday life, safety, judgment, communication, or the ability to manage familiar tasks. Dementia is not a normal part of aging, and some causes of memory problems can also be reversible or improved if they are recognized early. So as we go through these signs, I want you to listen for one question. Is this an occasional slip? Or is this becoming a pattern that is affecting daily life? That difference matters. Let's start with sign number 1. Sign number 1, repeating the same questions, stories, or concerns again and again. I am not talking about telling a favorite family story now and then. Many older adults do that, and honestly, many younger adults do too. I am talking about repeating something because the brain is not holding on to recent information the way it should. For example, a man asks what time the appointment is. His daughter tells him, "It's at 2 o'clock. 10 minutes later, he asks again, then again. And later that morning, he becomes upset because nobody ever told him. Or a woman tells the same story 3 times during one lunch visit, with no awareness that she has just said it. Or a spouse notices that important dates, recent conversations, or instructions disappear almost immediately unless they are written down or repeated several times. That is different from occasionally forgetting a name and recalling it later. One of the most common warning signs of Alzheimer's and other dementias is forgetting recently learned information, asking the same question over and over, or increasingly relying on reminders or family members for things the person used to manage independently. By contrast, a more typical age-related change is sometimes forgetting names or appointments, but remembering them later. What makes this sign especially important is not just the memory slip itself. It is the pattern. If it keeps happening, especially over weeks or months, and especially if it is becoming more frequent, that deserves attention. Families often tell me, "We thought dad was just distracted," or "We assumed mom wasn't listening." But sometimes the issue is not attention. Sometimes the issue is that new information is no longer being stored and retrieved properly. That does not automatically mean dementia. It can also happen with mild cognitive impairment, medication effects, poor sleep, depression, hearing loss, or other medical problems. But it is not something to brush aside when it becomes repetitive and disruptive. A simple way to think about it is this. Normal aging may make your memory slower. Concerning memory change makes your memory less reliable in daily life. That is a big difference. Sign number 2, trouble handling familiar steps, plans, or routines. This is where families often begin to see that the problem is bigger than being forgetful. A person who has managed the same household routine for years starts struggling with tasks that used to feel automatic. They may have trouble following a familiar recipe. They may forget the steps of taking medicines properly. They may become confused while paying monthly bills. They may lose track halfway through simple errands. They may start something they once did easily, then become overwhelmed, frustrated, or stuck. This kind of change often shows up quietly. A daughter may notice unopened mail piling up. A husband may realize that his wife, who used to run the home finances without difficulty, is now paying the same bill twice, or not paying it at all. A son may find that his father, who used to take his medicines with great care, is now skipping doses, doubling doses, or mixing up morning and evening pills. That matters because the problem is no longer just memory. It is memory affecting function. Official guidance for older adults notes that serious memory problems may show up as trouble following recipes or directions, while Alzheimer's warning signs also include difficulty completing familiar tasks and new trouble planning or solving problems. such as keeping track of monthly bills or following a familiar recipe. Typical age-related change, by contrast, would be occasional mistakes with finances or needing help once in a while with a microwave or television setting. This sign is easy to miss when the person is proud, private, or good at covering things up. Many older adults compensate for quite a while. They write more notes. They avoid the tasks that now feel hard. They let someone else take over just for now. They make excuses. And families often step in without realizing how much support they are already providing. That is why I always tell people, do not only ask, are they forgetting things? Also ask, are they still managing life the way they used to? That second question is often more revealing. Sign number 3, getting lost, confused about time, or turned around in familiar places. This is one of the clearest red flags. A person may go out to a store they have visited for years and suddenly not know how to get home. They may become confused in a familiar neighborhood. They may forget where they are, how they got there, or what part of the day it is. They may lose track of the season, the month, or the year, not just briefly, but in a way that affects daily function. Now, let's be fair. Many people of any age can momentarily forget what day it is. Retirement can make weekdays blur together. A quiet week can make Monday feel like Thursday. That alone is not the issue. The issue is when someone cannot reorient themselves easily, or when the confusion keeps happening in places and situations that used to be effortless. The CDC lists getting lost in a familiar neighborhood as a telltale sign that may point to dementia. Alzheimer's guidance also describes confusion with time or place, including losing track of dates, seasons, or the passage of time, and sometimes forgetting where a person is or how they got there. Normal aging, by contrast, may look like briefly confusing the day of the week and then figuring it out later. I want to add something very practical here. When a person becomes lost or disoriented in a familiar setting, safety becomes part of the conversation immediately. Because this is not just a memory issue anymore. This can affect driving. This can affect walking alone. This can affect whether someone can go out independently and return safely. Families sometimes hesitate to talk about this because they are worried about sounding controlling. But if a loved one is becoming turned around in familiar places, that is not a small detail. It is a safety sign. And one more point. If confusion comes on suddenly over hours or a few days, rather than gradually over months, that is a different situation. Sudden confusion can be delirium, which may be triggered by infection, dehydration, medication side effects, or illness, and it needs urgent medical attention. It is not something to watch casually from the sidelines. Sign number 4, new problems with words, conversation, or following what is being said. This one can be subtle. Someone may pause more often because they cannot find common words. They may call familiar objects by unusual names. They may stop in the middle of a sentence and not know how to continue. They may repeat themselves in the same conversation. They may follow group conversations poorly, not because the topic is complicated, but because keeping up has become difficult. Sometimes a family member says, "She just seems quieter now," or "He doesn't join in the conversation the way he used to." That may be memory. But it can also involve language, attention, hearing, or processing speed. That distinction matters. Alzheimer's guidance includes new problems with words in speaking or writing, trouble following or joining a conversation, difficulty naming familiar objects, and trouble understanding or expressing thoughts. Normal aging can include occasional word-finding trouble, but persistent communication breakdown is more concerning. Dementia can also affect language, attention, and communication, not memory alone. There is also an important overlap here with hearing loss. An older adult with untreated hearing loss may seem forgetful because they are not consistently hearing information clearly in the first place. They may answer in ways that seem off. They may withdraw from conversation. They may miss details and appear confused. The National Institute on Aging notes that hearing loss can affect cognitive health and that cognitive abilities, including memory and concentration, may decline faster in older adults with hearing loss. Untreated hearing problems can place extra strain on the brain because the brain is working harder just to decode sound. So when you notice language or conversation changes, do not jump to conclusions, but do not dismiss them either. Sometimes the first step is a good hearing evaluation. Sometimes it is a medication review. Sometimes it is a memory evaluation. The key is not assuming it is nothing. Sign number 5, misplacing things in unusual places and not being able to retrace steps. Almost everybody misplaces things sometimes. Glasses end up in the kitchen, keys disappear into a coat pocket, a phone gets left in the bathroom. That by itself is human. What becomes more concerning is when the object is left in a strange place, and the person cannot mentally go back through the sequence to find it. For example, a wallet ends up in the freezer. A remote control is found in the laundry basket. Important papers are tucked inside the oven drawer. A purse is placed in a cabinet behind dishes. And when the item is missing, the person may not be able to reason through where they were last, what they were doing, or what likely happened next. In more advanced situations, they may accuse other people of stealing. Alzheimer's Association guidance describes misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps as a warning sign. A typical age-related change would be misplacing things from time to time, and then being able to retrace steps to find them. The difference is not the lost item. The difference is whether the person can logically recover the path back to it. This sign often frustrates families because it can trigger arguments. The older adult feels certain that something wrong has happened. The family member knows the item is probably just misplaced. Both people feel unheard. If that is happening in your home, try not to turn it into a debate. Instead, notice the pattern. Is this occasional, or is it happening regularly? Is the person misplacing items in stranger places than before? Are they losing the ability to solve the problem? That is the real clinical clue. Sign number 6, poor judgment, unsafe decisions, or a noticeable drop in self-care. This sign can be painful for families because it often feels out of character. A person who used to be careful with money becomes vulnerable to scams. Someone who once kept themselves neat and organized begins neglecting bathing, grooming, or clean clothes. A person with excellent kitchen habits starts leaving the stove on. Someone who used to read labels carefully begins taking the wrong medicine at the wrong time. A cautious driver starts making risky decisions. A careful spender suddenly gives money away unwisely. That is not just forgetfulness. That is judgment and executive function being affected. NIA guidance for serious memory problems includes not taking care of yourself, eating poorly, not bathing, or behaving unsafely. Alzheimer's guidance also lists decreased or poor judgment, such as poor decisions about money or paying less attention to grooming and personal care. Typical aging might mean making a bad decision once in a while. What is more concerning is when poor decisions become repetitive and begin to change daily safety. This is also where families may first notice financial trouble, identity theft, charity scams, multiple questionable purchases, unpaid bills mixed with impulsive spending. These problems can progress quietly because many older adults value privacy around money. If you are concerned, it helps to look for gentle evidence rather than relying only on a direct yes or no question. Has the mail changed? Are late notices appearing? Are there unusual bank withdrawals? Have routines around meals, hygiene, or medicines changed? Sometimes that tells you more than memory questions alone. And again, I want to stress this. Medication effects can sometimes imitate or worsen cognitive problems in older adults. Some medicines and combinations of medicines can cause confusion, memory loss, hallucinations, or delusions. Older adults may be more sensitive to these effects because of age-related changes in the brain, kidneys, liver, and the way drugs move through the body. That is one reason I never want families to assume this is automatically dementia, but it is also why I never want them to ignore it. Sign number 7, withdrawal, mood changes, or personality changes that feel new. This sign is often misunderstood. Families sometimes say, "She's just older and less social," or "He's just become a bit more stubborn." And sometimes that is partly true. Aging can change energy, preferences, and tolerance for noise or activity, but when the change is significant, persistent, and clearly different from the person's usual self, it deserves attention. Maybe someone who always loved church, cards, gardening, or family dinners starts pulling away. Maybe they stop joining conversations because they cannot follow them well. Maybe they become more suspicious, irritable, anxious, or easily upset, especially outside familiar routines. Maybe they seem flatter emotionally, less interested, less engaged, less themselves. Alzheimer's guidance includes withdrawal from work or social activities and changes in mood or personality among the warning signs. Dementia may affect behavior and personality in addition to memory, and some people may lose interest in normal daily activities or become more confused, fearful, or easily upset. I also want to be very careful here, because depression can look like memory loss. So can grief. So can loneliness. So can sleep problems. So can chronic stress. NIA notes that depression can lead to confusion or attention problems, and memory problems may also be related to depression, anxiety, sleep issues, poor nutrition, vitamin B12 deficiency, thyroid problems, alcohol use, or medication side effects. These possibilities matter because some can improve when treated. So if a loved one seems to be changing emotionally or socially, please do not reduce it to personality. Look at the whole picture: mood, function, communication, sleep, appetite, medication, isolation, hearing, memory. These pieces often connect. Now, after hearing these 7 signs, you may be wondering, what should you actually do? Here is the part I want to make simple. First, do not panic. One sign by itself does not automatically equal dementia, and even several signs do not tell you the cause. But a clear pattern means it is time to talk with a health professional. NIA advises talking with a doctor when noticeable memory changes appear, and Alzheimer's Association materials say that if you notice these kinds of signs, do not ignore them and arrange a full medical evaluation. Early assessment matters because some causes may be reversible or treatable, and because it allows planning, support, and safer daily decisions. Second, bring examples. This helps more than saying, "Memory seems worse." Try something more specific. She asked the same question 4 times in one afternoon. He got lost driving home from the grocery store he has used for 10 years. She paid the electric bill twice and forgot her heart pills 3 times this week. He has stopped bathing unless someone reminds him. Specific examples help a clinician understand whether the issue is memory, judgment, language, attention, mood, or function. Third, bring a full medication list. That means prescriptions, over-the-counter medicines, sleep aids, allergy pills, bladder medicines, herbal products, vitamins, everything. Older adults can have cognitive side effects from medicines, and some drug combinations can create or worsen confusion. Fourth, do not go alone if you can help it. A trusted family member or friend can describe changes the older adult may not notice or may find hard to explain. NIA notes that clinicians may ask family members, caregivers, or close friends for information because they can provide useful observations. Fifth, take sudden change seriously. If confusion appears quickly, especially with drowsiness, agitation, fever, dehydration, recent illness, or after a medication change, treat that as urgent. That may be delirium or another medical problem, not gradual aging. And finally, remember this: the goal is not to label someone. The goal is to understand what is happening. Sometimes the answer is mild cognitive impairment. Sometimes it is hearing loss. Sometimes it is depression. Sometimes it is medication. Sometimes it is dementia. And sometimes it is a combination of several things at once. But older adults deserve better than being told that's just age, when daily life is clearly changing. If memory change is repeating itself, affecting routines, causing confusion, changing judgment, disrupting communication, or reducing safety, it is worth checking. Not because we want to assume the worst, but because earlier attention can lead to earlier support, safer choices, and sometimes treatment of a reversible cause. If this conversation helped you, stay with me on this channel. Here, we talk about senior health in a calm, practical way so you can understand what to watch for and what to do next. And if you are seeing one of these signs in yourself or someone you love, please do not ignore your instincts. Quiet changes are still real changes, and sometimes noticing them early is the most important step of all.